Coming to you from fabulous Las Vegas.
The right side is the winning side.
The late move is the correct move.
Sports betting capital of the world.
We all know when a sharp like me weighs in, the lines move.
It's a party for your ears. This is The Buffet with Chad and Scooch.
I want to buy that guy a buffet.
Hello and welcome to The Buffet with Chad and Scooch. I am Chad Millman, head of media for the Action Network. On the phone with me in Las Vegas, Bob Scucci, the bookmaker at the Orleans and all the Boyd Gaming books in the state of Nevada. How you doing, Scooch?
I'm good, Chad. How are you?
Scooch, I miss our walk-up music for you, and I think we're going to have to get Matt Mitchell, who made the intro song for the Buffet podcast, to come up with some walk-up music for you, too.
Oh, I definitely need some. I'm missing. I remember how I had to kind of wait for the little lead-in and everything, and we don't have that. We need that.
It built up the anticipation.
Yeah. So I'm a little tired today. I got to tell you, I didn't get a wink of sleep last night, and just real quick, I was hearing noises all night at my house. And it woke me up. I thought it was part of my dream, but it woke up and I thought there was something on my roof, like maybe pigeons or something. So I go outside. I'm out there with a flashlight. Now it's 3:00 in the morning, and I'm hearing these noises, but I can't see anything. So I didn't see anything on the backyard. I have a courtyard kind of in the middle section of my house, but it's outdoors. I go out there and I hear the noise louder and louder. I walk out, and on my roof, which is maybe 15 feet high, are two gigantic owls that are like, hoo, 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 hoo. I mean, I'm a city guy. I'm not used to the outdoor stuff. Now, I don't know if they're gigantic owls because I have no perspective. I'll just say that they were a lot bigger than I ever thought owls were, okay? And one of them got spooked and kind of swoops down, and these things have like a wingspan of about 6 feet.
And they have vicious talons, I believe.
They're nasty. So I'm ducking. I'm out there with just a pair of shorts and at 3:00 in the morning, and I'm ducking owls as they're like leaping off the roof. So now the rest of the night, I'm wondering what's going on my roof. I mean, did they get something? Is there like a nest on my roof? So I slept like zero last night.
Or is the Scooch Palace the owl love nest? Is word out? Too. The word is out in Vegas that if owls need to get it on, they are going to Scooch's roof.
And you can't blame them, huh?
No, because that's where love happens. I love the idea that you started the podcast almost like you were coming. It's like you were coming out on a talk show. I'm a little tired today. Let me tell you what happened to me. It's like you were being pre-interviewed. Mike Grinnell, who is the producer extraordinaire for the Spit and Chicklets podcast on Barstool, he is helping us produce this podcast today. And it's like Mike. He sat with you beforehand and did a pre-interview and decided this is going to be the best story Scooch can tell when he comes out on the show today. So don't even worry about asking him any questions because he'll just launch into the owl story. And it's going to be, by the way, it's going to be a hoot.
You are such a wordsmith.
I just did that right there. I did that right
on
there.
On the spot.
I did that right there sitting in my hotel room in New York City. I apologized last week for all the sound issues that we had. Everybody let me know in the most polite way possible, and I mean that seriously. People couldn't have been kinder. Letting me know that we had some sound issues with the podcast because we did, because we're only 3 weeks into recording this new podcast for the Action Network, and I didn't have a microphone. Now I have a microphone. So I'm recording on this, plus we got Mike to come in and help us. So we're trying to professionalize the operation a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Does sound good. Mike, how does it sound to you, buddy?
Sounds great.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
We'll let the listeners decide, huh?
Later on in the show, last week the star of the show was Jon Atto from Detroit, who was the first member of the syndicate because the syndicate on the Action Network, because he got 35 people to sign up for the newsletter. And so we had him on, and he came on, and he blew the doors off the place. He was like our own Rico Bosco, and he was amazing and came in with language no one had ever heard of and theories on 405 games that we were all following on Sunday for 405. And so by popular demand, and by that I mean Atto texted me yesterday and said, I'm coming back on, right? And so he's going to come on for Scooch Roulette. He's also got a fantasy cheating story. Today, the UK ruled that Phil Ivey, Scooch, you probably kept up with this a little bit. You know, there were these big cases, and 30 for 30 did a huge podcast. They did some podcasts. They've started doing podcasts, obviously. And they did a big podcast on Phil Ivey and a partner going to London and playing, I think it was Baccarat, and basically getting an advantage in the way they were asking for, they were making requests of the dealers in which they could read the cards. And so they ran up a $12 million day, and they won $12 million. And then the casino sued, saying they were cheating. And that went to the highest court in England. And England today, if I'm not mistaken, I should probably fact check this, because right now the only person I know who's telling me the truth is Jonathan Atto. But apparently they ruled today that he was cheating. So he wants to come in and tell a cheating story.
Okay.
All right.
I know that Phil Ivey was a big player at one of our former properties. He was at the Borgata years ago, and part of what he was doing with the partner, he was also doing. It was a court case in New Jersey as well. So that was, I think, the first case.
Well, it actually was. It was a case in New Jersey as well. I don't know if that one has been completed yet.
And I don't know either.
But it is true. Jonathan Atto was correct. The UK did rule that Phil Ivey cheated at the casino to win $10 million. I see the headline right now.
Wow.
So there you go. Man, $10 million, Scooch.
It's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money to gamble and win in a single day.
Oh, my God, yeah.
That's a day. I mean, that's it for me. I feel like I could walk away with $10 million.
So, some people, it's not the dollar amount. It's just the thrill of getting more and more, the thrill of winning. So, once you've won the money, it's not really about the money. And it's crazy. I know we can't comprehend that, but that's kind of the mindset of a lot of these gamblers.
Well, obviously, and Ivey is one of those guys, having spent time with him now several years ago when I did a story about, and I talked about this in the podcast that they did on 30 for 30 about this case. I had written a cover story about him for ESPN the magazine, and did a profile of him for E60, where he had invited me on this around the world gambling tour that started at one of the casinos in Connecticut, where he came in, landed with his manager and his bodyguard. His bodyguard, by the way, who Scooch, because he used to be Alan Boston's roommate when I was working on the odds.
Right. Okay.
Remember that guy?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
I'm not going to name him because I don't know what he wants known about his life. But so this guy showed up. Phil Ivey shows up at the casino, walks in the lobby, walks in with his manager, and then this guy, who we both know, walks in behind him, and I see him like, what are you doing here? And I hadn't seen the guy in 10 years since I had been doing the odds, right? And then I would see the guy. When I was working on the odds, I saw the guy every single day. Every single day I was in Vegas, he was there. That I spent all Saturdays, at Alan Boston's. I would show up at Boston's at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and I'd leave about 7 o'clock at night, and that's when I'd go catch up with you and Lupo and Corona, and we'd have dinner. And that's when you'd tell me what I was going to write in the book that you wrote. And he was there every day, and so I saw him standing there. But anyways, and so I had a great time with him all weekend. He was actually a great buffer for me and Ivey, who scared the living daylights out of me. And Ivey came in. He won $250,000 at the casino we were at. The next day, we went to another casino. He was up $1.5 million. Asked me if I wanted to roll at the craps table. I lost him $750,000.
Holy!
I never told you that story?
You told me that you were traveling with him. I remember you were coming from out of the country or something. You were on his private jet or something like that. But I don't think you told me you rolled the dice for him and lost him a bunch of money.
Oh, no, it was crazy. Like, we were in a, when Ivy travels, and I think this, you know better than I do, when any high roller travels, they're not playing craps or, like, on the casino floor. Like, he walks in to the casino in Connecticut and again in Montreal, and he's in a private room with his own table and his own croupier and a manager standing by his side and access to the cage, which for those who don't know is where they keep all the money. And he took out $1 million from the cage in Montreal, and we're in this private room with a craps table that has a gold nameplate on it that says Phil Ivey, and we had just come from a massive, just completely hedonistic spread of breakfast that was for 4 people but could have fed 30 people. And he's rolling. And those things are so weird because they're so quiet, right? It's not like in a movie where you're rolling craps and there's so many people around you and beautiful women blowing on the dice and money is sort of moving slowly across, the felt top table and, everyone's screaming and there's euphoria. This is quiet as it can be. It's it's Ivy rolling and the croupier yelling the numbers and laying down chips, and that's it. There's no sort of emotion. There is no action. It is tense and quiet. So he wins a bunch of money, and then it's like the table is cleared, and he says to me, "Do you want to roll?" And I say, "Sure." And I really don't want to at all, but I do it because I'm working on the story for the magazine. We have cameras there for E60. I need we need good drama. So I start rolling, and pretty soon the entire table is covered, but I haven't won him any money yet. I haven't rolled anything.
You rolled
twice.
all the points.
I rolled it exact. So I know the next roll is either he's winning a boatload of money from me, or I'm crapping out. And naturally, I crap out. And so, there was $750,000 on the table. He looks at me and he goes, and this is the cleaned up version. He goes, "You're mush."
Wow.
Can you think of anything worse to say to anybody in a casino?
Oh no, that's it. That is
the lowest of the low. That is the absolute worst thing you can say to someone is that they're mush. You basically told them that they are a no luck, gutter crawling square who that person never wants to be around again as long as they live, and certainly for any length of time while they are in a casino.
And then what do you do from there? You just hang your head and kind of at that point, what do you do?
I hang my head and I walk out. I really did. I hung my head. I walked out at the door. I needed a breather. I was exhausted. And so he went on to he kept gambling and went on to win $750,000. So he walked away for those 36 hours, he was up at least $1.5 million between what he had won in Connecticut and then what he won in Montreal. And then that night we flew overnight on his private jet to Amsterdam and spent the next day in Amsterdam. You can imagine what that was like.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah. And then, that was a chill day. And then not a lot of reporting going on today. And then we went to, and then we flew overnight to, or early the next morning we flew to Austria. He had some poker event he was going to. So anyways, he lost his case. That's a long-winded tangent of saying Jon Atto was going to come on the podcast, and he's got a story about cheating inspired by Phil Ivey getting a case ruled against him today in England.
I think you just covered the story.
That is everything I can say.
Yeah.
Scooch, last weekend was a tough weekend because none of the games we were thinking, the weekend before, every contrarian side won, right? This past weekend, none of the contrarian sides won. The Niners didn't. The Giants didn't. The Packers. You were all over me in the podcast saying that the public and the wise guys were on the Panthers. I said, I don't see it. I'm on the Bears. I should have taken them for my Scooch roulette, and I didn't because I took the Packers. But that was one of the rare ways in which the underdogs came through, and that was pure luck. Like, the Bears had no business winning that game at all. So
right, you got this. Yeah, you got the 75-yard pick six, and you got a couple of turnovers. I mean, Cam Newton certainly wasn't himself in that game, but overall, there were not a lot of underdogs. The public actually won last week. We had a very subpar weekend, but it was largely because of the sharp guys who were wrong on almost every game, and including yourself. So and me. So that's evidence that the sharp guys went down last week.
Well, I think this is the first. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Right? Yeah, you're earning that reputation as the sharp guy. You're on private jets with professional gamblers in foreign countries. So I think that qualifies you for being a wise guy.
You just called me a sharp. You called me a wise guy.
Yep.
Man.
But I mean,
that is as nice as it gets. And well, speaking of sharp, I should point out that if you haven't signed up for the Action Network newsletter, you must, because we're getting great feedback on it. And everyone in the Action Network is working really hard on coming up with content every day that we can throw in there that is really fun, that has utility, that is actionable. In today's version, we write about where the wise guys are betting on Game 2 of the World Series. We write about some NFL trends that the wise guys have played already for this week that you can look ahead to and still get an opportunity to play on. We had some fun with some prop bets about Sam Darnold no longer being the guy will be projected to be the first quarterback drafted in the NFL draft. And so check it out. Go sign up for it at actionnetwork.com. Lots of people, literally thousands of people have signed up for this already, Scooch. Thousands and thousands of people. I know you're still getting used to the idea that there is such a thing as the Action Network, but people are buying it.
I believe it.
That's my pitch. That's my pitch right there. Let's talk about some games. Miami and Baltimore. This total is at 37. According to Sports Insights, one of the members of the Action Network, this is one of the lowest totals in Thursday Night Football that's ever been. And I think it's appropriate because why would anybody want to be involved in this game in any way? So you have to entice people with as low a total as you possibly can. Right.
I mean, there's no Jay Cutler went out with the ribs last week, and so he's out. Not a whole lot of action on the game, but yeah, I could picture this just being a real low-scoring game unless the defense gets involved with a couple of defensive scores. But you can't really expect I mean, not that Miami was putting up a ton of points with Cutler, so I understand the move on the total and on the side itself. We were actually pretty heavy on the Dolphins until probably the last a few hours here when it seemed like we got a little money back on the Ravens. So pretty dead even on this game. I don't see much of a decision at all. The ticket count is almost identical on both sides. So I think it's going to be just a case of, it's Thursday night game. You got to play it just because it's the only game on. And, I've kind of said it all season. A lot of times these Thursday night games, you look at them and they don't seem like much, but they turn out to be real good games. So you never know. This might turn out to be another great game. We talked about the Rams and the 49ers. I wasn't expecting much, but that turned out to be a real good game. And so we've had some pretty good action on Thursday nights.
By the way, that is just damning with faint praise. It's going to be a game. I guess we got to put it on.
Right? Trying to be honest. But really, I've said the same thing going into a couple of Thursday night games. I'm like, oh, my God, the Rams, 49ers. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. And it turned out we had more action on that game than we did any other Thursday night game. And it turned out to be a great game right down to the wire. I think the lowest handle we had on a game, I think the Houston Texans and the Cincinnati Bengals was a Thursday night game that we just didn't draw much. But outside of that, a lot of them have been pretty good. Last week with the Raiders and the Chiefs, that was a phenomenal game.
All right, well,
so, yeah.
Moving on to Minnesota. Yeah. Did I cut you off? Did you not get to finish your thought?
No, I was just thinking I really like the Raiders in that one. I probably should have used that as the Scooch roulette pick, but since you threw out your Bears.
Yeah. Hindsight, right, my friend. The thing is that I actually talked about how much I like the Bears on the podcast. I didn't, just pick it out of thin air a week later.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what to do with this Cleveland team. Like, how do you? It's the London game, so it's a neutral field. So normally Cleveland. Like last week, I was doing a Q&A on Action Network HQ, which is our Twitter handle. Verified this week. Big deal, Scooch. That is a big deal in the Twitter world. We got a blue check mark, and I'm pretty excited about that. But I was doing a Q&A on Sunday on the handle, and someone said to me, "Why are the wise guys always on the Browns?" My answer wasn't the wise guys are always on the Browns. The wise guys are always going to be on a heavy underdog at home. Just so happened the Browns covered this weekend, but they're always the heavy underdog at home. This weekend they're again a theoretical home team in London. They're this number's moved up to 9.5 and 10 after opening at 7. All the money coming in on Minnesota. I'm assuming that's all public. Is there any wise guy money interested in this game at all?
None. Like you said, what usually drives a lot of the wise guy money on these dogs is typically when they're at home, or unless you just make the favorite so ridiculously high that they almost have to take it. I think at 10, when this line goes to 10, I think we'll get money on Cleveland. But I just think Cleveland's actually been pretty good to us in terms of covering, so I don't think we're that far off on a lot of our numbers with Cleveland. So I think we'll just kind of ride it out at 9.5. We opened 9, we went to 9.5, so all of it's public money, but the ticket count is about 12-1, 13-1. It's one of the highest ratio differentials I've seen in games in terms of just the ticket count. So I imagine with the Vikings covering last week, typically people remember what they saw last week, and so we're going to be pretty heavy on the Vikings here.
Scooch, you know what you just did there? You allowed me to make a nice segue into two different things. One, I want to remind people that in the Action Network newsletter, if you're getting it, which hopefully you are, I made a reference to exactly what you just said, that people generally bet on their public perception and that they generally bet on what they saw last week. That's number one. Number two, you made a segue into betting, a number needing to get to 10 in a game like this before the wise guys are going to weigh in. And with Chicago and New Orleans, we have exactly that. We have a game that has been bet up to 10 in a lot of places. I don't know where you're at. Such an interesting game, right? Like, how do you judge this game? Because on the one side, the Bears have been covering like dynamos. They're 5-2 against the spread. They've won outright against Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Carolina. They have covered at home in every game. Obviously, they're not at home this weekend. But they keep finding ways to sort of be in a game. But meanwhile, New Orleans is starting to get really good, and their defense is playing phenomenally well. And so how do you sort of protect yourself in a game like this, and which way are the wise guys going?
So the wise guys haven't weighed in yet, but I think it's going to be similar to the Vikings-Browns, that they're going to wait till they can get the best number possible, which we're not quite at 10 yet. But again, if we go to 10, the wise guys will take it. But New Orleans has been one of those teams that has not only been playing better each week, but has been getting more action from the bettors each week. Last week, we felt was the real test for them going into Green Bay, even though Green Bay was without Aaron Rodgers. Green Bay was pretty banged up, both on the offensive line, the defensive side, basic quarterbacks, free safeties. So, I think that kind of came into play. It was kind of a tight game up until the end there, and I think they just wore them down. But New Orleans' offense is going to be really tough for Chicago to stop. I don't know how much to take into Chicago's win against the Panthers, because it was more of a case of just Cam Newton just not being on as much as you mentioned. It wasn't Chicago's offense. It was their defense that basically won that game for them. So New Orleans defense is going to be pretty tough for Chicago to score on. Even though you look at some of New Orleans games and they've let up a lot of points, if you actually look at what the defense let up in terms of yards per play, which is a better indicator, they've got a pretty good defense. A lot of those high-scoring games came from turnovers or the other team's defensive scoring on New Orleans offense. So I like you said, I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. The public's all over New Orleans as they were last week, and they're gonna ride them out.
like I hate doing double-digit favorites, but I have no faith in the Bears. I think they're kind of frauds.
Well, because you don't see when you see them scoring on a 75-yard pick six, or I mean, you got to give the defense some credit, but you can't. That's not the kind of thing you can kind of rely on. As a more consistent metric would be, how many plays they're running per game, and how many yards they're picking up rushing, and how many yards they're picking up per pass, and you're not seeing it on the offensive side. So I think that's why it's difficult to kind of gauge them. Like you said, they're 5-2 against the spread, so they are getting there. They've been another team like Cleveland that's been good to us this year. So hopefully we get one more out of them.
Speaking of frauds, how about those Atlanta Falcons? Remember our theory on the Falcons? Like for years, it has been, early, and it's playing true this year. Only it's happening earlier. They beat the Bears in the first week, and it looked like it was going to be a tough, it looked like a good win for them, like a last-second win. They stopped the Bears at the goal line in the final seconds of the game. It turns out the Bears are tough, but they're not that good, and the Falcons are so bad they could barely beat the Bears. And so now they open anywhere as high as 6.5. I was texting with Jeff Sherman on Sunday, Jeff Sherman of the Westgate, and saying, this was when the Jets were winning. The Jets were beating the Dolphins by 2 touchdowns. I'm like, how bad is the spread if the Jets how big of underdogs at home are the Jets if they beat the Dolphins and the Falcons lose to the Patriots? And he said they'd open at 6.5 regardless of what happened, and they did. A lot of places opened at sort of 4.5. I don't know where you opened, Scooch, but to me, this is one of those spots, and 74% of the money right now is on, or the bets are on, and the money for that matter, are on the Falcons. You go all in on the Jets in this game. All in.
On who?
On the Jets.
You go all in on the Jets. So that's why we opened as low. We opened 4 because of that same idea that we feel like the public is going to feel the same way. They're going to be a home dog. The Jets have been covering, and the Falcons look worse and worse. They went almost 5 straight quarters without scoring a single point. If you go back to the second half of the Dolphins game where they blew a 17-0 lead, didn't score in the second half, didn't score against the Patriots. I really felt that they'd be up for this Patriots game and would just kind of leave the Dolphin game behind them. But I just don't. There's something wrong with this offense, and they have essentially the same players and Julio Jones, and you look at some of the statistics in the red zone, and Julio Jones has rarely been targeted, which is a problem. So maybe they're not making the proper adjustments, and it's got to come back to coaching, obviously, but there's definitely something wrong with this Atlanta team. I actually think that they have to rebound in this game. So as much as I think the public is going to see maybe a little value on the Jets at home, we actually opened 4. We moved it up to 5, actually, not on a great deal of money. So it's more of a move on where we might actually take a side and actually go into this game needing Atlanta, which probably won't be the worst thing. I mean, you look at the line. What would you have made this line prior to the season started when you thought that the Jets were not going to win more than three or 4 games, and you thought
10.
that Atlanta?
It would have been 10. I'm not even kidding.
So
I'm not kidding.
No, yeah. So we're talking about a 6-point adjustment. It's a big adjustment. So I'm not saying that it's not warranted. I'm just saying that if there's any value there, it's probably on Atlanta.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. I mean, it goes against everything I believe. It goes against every fiber of my being to think there's value on the team that is the road favorite.
Right.
And that's what gets you into trouble, right? All of a sudden you play consistently one way every time, and you trust the process, and then you decide to make a decision against that particular process. That's when you make a mistake.
Yeah, because you're making.
I don't care. So I don't care what you're saying. I'm still going with Jeff.
Okay. I mean, if Atlanta loses this game, they're done. They're done. And
I don't buy the emotional sort of impact in these things.
No.
I don't think that's that big of a deal. Once you start playing and hitting, everybody's invested the same way.
Right.
So don't bring that to this house.
No, I won't. I forgot who I'm talking to.
Yeah. You know. Okay. I don't play the emotional game. Carolina at Tampa Bay. Panthers, they're 2.5, 3 in some places. Pretty even split. Money heavily on the Panthers as the road dogs. I mean, that's wise guy money right there.
Yes. And we kind of shaded the Panthers. We just talked about it, and I mentioned their game against Chicago last week, and I'm almost dismissing a lot of it and I think Cam Newton just rebounds in this game. I wanted to shade it as much as I can to get some Tampa Bay money. I think Carolina's kind of the value play here. They're on the road, and I would have expected them to be a short road favorite at the beginning of the year, but Tampa Bay has kind of exceeded some expectations, and Carolina is disappointed. So we've seen some of the adjustment, but without Tampa, I think getting a couple of points, not a whole lot of value in terms of a point spread, but I think Carolina gets the win here. So we're kind of shading it a little bit in that direction.
So Carolina was one of those teams that we talked about in the newsletter today as being one of those value plays and one of those trendy plays that the wise guys are going in on. So that makes sense. The other one, we talked about some others, but one of the other ones that we focused on was San Francisco, no matter who's playing quarterback, as a 13-point dog at Philadelphia. And when you talk about betting what you last saw, you've got the opposite ends of the spectrum here, right?
Yeah, exactly. 49ers played their probably worst game of the year last week against Dallas, and the Eagles won a huge game against Washington and won fairly convincingly. So the Eagles were already one of those public teams that the bettors were kind of riding out the whole season. So I would expect more of the same. So we just want to make this as high as possible. And at 13, I mean, that is pretty high. I mean, you throw out the 49ers last game, and they had kept their previous 5 games to within 3 points. And in a lot of those games, they were getting 7 points. They were getting 9 points. We really expected the 49ers to play last week against Dallas a lot closer. The quarterback play was really bad, and you can't make mistakes early like they did, fielding a punt return inside their own 10-yard line, and they muffed a punt. When you're playing against good teams and you're a sizable underdog, those are the kind of things you need to go in the opposite direction. If you, as a bad team, when those things happen to you, then you have no shot of coming back, and I think that was the case.
I'm going to be all in on the Niners. I feel like they're a team playing hard. I actually have no trouble taking the points in any game they're in, which is what you're going to do in every game they're in.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for a rookie quarterback to kind of get adjusted to the different defenses that he sees, and you got to cut him some slack, but. And the defense for the 49ers has been what's really kept them in a lot of these games. But you got to get that offense to make some first downs and get the defense off the field. Otherwise, they just get worn down by the end of the game.
So this next game is interesting. Oakland at Buffalo. All the money is streaming in on the Raiders. I'm assuming that's all public money. I don't think the wise guys are going to come in and bet, the Raiders at -2.5, at +2.5. But what's the theory there?
Yeah, so this Bills team has been real interesting in terms of what the public has been. The public loves this Bills team. For some reason they just they like their offense. They feel like their defense keeps them in games. And talk about a team that just plays a lot of close games. Last week the game fell right on the number. They were laying 3 points against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that game fell 3, which isn't good for us. But they keep a lot of games close, and at home they have a real strong home field advantage. Up there in Buffalo, especially when it starts getting to late autumn, the team plays well up there. It's a tough environment for a West Coast team like the Raiders to come up into and play. So. It's an interesting game, but I don't see. I don't know that the wise guys are going to be on the Bills in this one. I think if anything, that the wise guys will be on the same side as the public.
Interesting. Wow, I was going to be all over the Bills in that game.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
You know what? I'm playing my game. I'm playing my game, which is based on years of theory and practice and precedent. And if the wise guys want to sort of jumble around and not go with what's worked in the past because they're getting scared because last weekend was so bad, well, who on them? Here's another game that we talked about in the newsletter today that came from our Sports Insights / Bet Labs team in the Action Network, which I know it's a lot of brands to remember. Sooner rather than later, we're going to be all merged together, and you won't have to worry about everything else. But for now, just think of us as the Action Network and sign up for the newsletter at actionnetwork.com. Cincinnati, huge favorite over Indy. Again, another one, Colts blown out. That's what people are seeing. Most of the money coming in on the Colts, although it seems to me that there's a preponderance of tickets on the Bengals.
Yeah, we're definitely heavy on the Bengals. 10-point favorite. I would try to make it as high as we can. I'm surprised anybody betting on the Colts in recent weeks. Last week we hardly had any money on that game against Jacksonville, and there's really nothing to kind of look. You want to talk about what you saw last week? I mean, they didn't score a point, so it's tough for them to come back and have any faith in the Colts. And why would you even bet this game? I mean, two teams that really have gotten very little action the last few weeks. The Bengals haven't shown anything either. So it's probably going to be one of the lower bet games on the board in terms of like popularity. So 10 points, I could see it going up. I mean, we might go up just based on the looking at the ticket count here, and but it's not going to be a real big game.
Well, you really took the air out of that one.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I would. Colts fans and Bengals fans. Sorry to hear.
What about the Chargers and the Patriots? Like that, all of a sudden becomes an interesting game. The Patriots are touchdown favorites. They're at home. They're going to get the majority of the action from the public. Are the wise guys weighing in on the Chargers?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we opened up 8.5 on this game. We went to 7.5 real quick. We're actually going to be going down to 7 really quickly. A lot of times when I'm doing the show here, I'm watching the bets coming in, and real shortly we're going to be at 7. So by game time, you're going to be laying 7 with the Patriots. Wise
Change it on the pod. Change it on the pod. Change it on the pod. Do it right now. Do it
right now. Right now.
Yes.
Done.
Nice. You just moved to 7.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're
like
there.
That happens.
Yeah.
Give that guy a buffet.
Yep, absolutely. The Chargers have been playing real well, and we'll have our guest come on who actually picked the Chargers last week. So give him credit. That was a convincing win with 21-0 over the Denver Broncos. They're playing well, and the Patriots are coming off of a big game. They played the Falcons on the Sunday night game in the spotlight. A lot of times you look at a team after a big win, maybe they come out a little flat, especially if it's a team that maybe they take a little lightly, or a game that they really should win. I heard Tom Brady on a couple of interviews, and he's not that type of quarterback to say that any team is on the lower rung. He'll say that this team is every bit as good as the team we played last week, and they've got a tough deep. He gives everybody credit. He doesn't want to give anybody any bulletin board material. So, according to him, they're not taking this game lightly. But a lot of times, a lot of the players do, coming off of a big game. So, laying more than a touchdown, sometimes that can be a lot. But in this game, I think the Chargers' defense is what the wise guys are seeing that's going to keep this game close.
Houston is playing at Seattle. Relatively big number. I don't think that I think Deshaun Watson's amazing, and I'm not sure that you're reflecting how good he is. I'm not sure your rating has changed enough to incorporate his value.
So the Seahawks started the year as one of the highest rated teams in the NFC, and we've been making the adjustments, and I guess at some point, you feel like you've just adjusted it too much, especially since they did get the cover last week against the Giants. in a game that many people felt like the Giants was one of the biggest wise guy moves last week. That game opened up Seattle 6.5. By game time, Seattle was only a 3-point favorite against the Giants. Wise guys were all over it. And in the first half, we actually thought, yeah, well, they were right again because the Giants were up 7-3 at halftime. But Seattle came back. They won 24-7. They actually looked pretty good in the second half, and it starts to make you wonder: is this the team that we actually thought was the team at the beginning of the year? Just judging on that second half. So you try not to over-adjust, but having said that, we opened up the Seahawks a 6-point favorite, and the first couple of bets were on the Houston Texans from some pretty sharp bettors, and it drove it down to 5.5. So obviously they feel the same way you do on this one. But I think the public
wise
will be.
Guy.
Yeah, sometimes the wise guys lose, like last week, though. So, gotta keep that in mind.
Don't bring me down.
No. But there was a bunch of teams last week, I got to say, that were ranked really highly at the beginning of the year, and then were suddenly disappointing for about a 2 or 3 week stretch, and suddenly came to life. And were the team that we thought they were at the beginning of the year. So like the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of those teams. The Dallas Cowboys obviously played.
You just ruined my transition, Scooch. I was going to say
right there.
We're going to talk about a couple of those teams in these last few games.
Okay, well here we go.
Go ahead. Talk about the Cowboys and the Redskins. The Cowboys are 2.5 point road favorites, and how I'm going to be on the Redskins, because why wouldn't I be? Because this is a prime time spot to bet on a home dog.
Yeah, and you're going to get some value, and I'll tell you why. Prior to the games, a lot of places put up early lines on a lot of these games for the following week. And the early lines on this game, prior to the Redskins playing on Monday night, were a pick'em. So this game was basically a pick'em prior to that Redskins loss against the Eagles. So that means that there was a 2.5 point adjustment just off of the Monday night loss to the Eagles. Now, this is a huge rivalry. Everybody knows Cowboys, Redskins, huge rivalry. Redskins at home, play well at home. They're on a little bit of a short week playing the Cowboys, but this is going to be one of those games where the public is going to see that short road favorite on a team that just won 40-10 the week before, one of the preseason picks to win the NFC, and the public is going to be all over the Cowboys in this one, and they already are at about a rate of about 7-1 or 8-1. So we're going to be with you if you like the Washington. We're right there with you, needing them.
Squares and suckers. Pittsburgh and Detroit, another one like Le'Veon Bell the last 2 weeks. Also, this was referenced in the newsletter today. You can sign up for that at actionnetwork.com. They're on the road. They're favorites at Detroit. That's a dangerous spot. Spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh, boy.
Yeah, it really is. But again, Pittsburgh seems like they're finally getting that offense where it should be after, like I mentioned, a few week stretch of them being disappointing to a lot of the bettors. So they've kind of picked back up on them. We're going to end up needing Detroit in this one because this is almost identical to what I just described in the Cowboys-Redskins game, where team coming off of a big win that covered and the public was on. They're going to ride them again this week. They're only laying a field goal, so it's going to seem like it's really attractive. And we're just going to have to hope that the Lions' home field advantage comes into play, and we're going to end up needing them.
I think it's going to work for you, and that's going to be a huge game as a primetime game on Sunday night when everyone's lost on their Cowboys bets, and they've lost their Seahawks bets, and they've lost their Patriots bets, and they've lost their Raiders bets. Like, that's going to be a massive, massive game. Monday Night Football. Nope, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, so this week is going to be volatile for the sports books only because you've got so many teams. You have 6 teams that are on their bye week, which means, and then you have that early game in London, and which means that all these decisions are going to be highly concentrated. So we're not going to have the luxury of dispersing a lot of the liability throughout a full slate of games. Our liability is going to come down to 3 or 4 games, and probably the ones that you just mentioned, and it's going to make or break our day. That those three games, and so these kind of weeks scare us a little bit.
Denver at Kansas City. Denver is fading fast. They do not look good. Kansas City still doesn't get the respect it should as one of the NFL's best teams, and it won't get the respect until it wins a Super Bowl. How do you book this game? Where are the wise guys?
They're actually on the Broncos only because we made the Chiefs as high as we could. We opened it up 7.5. So I guess that extra hook was what drew them in and made it somewhat attractive. But like you mentioned, the last few weeks with the Broncos, they've been just sliding, and we've been making those adjustments. And then the Chiefs kind of slipped up in a game against the Raiders that they probably should have had. It would have been a nice road win for them. But this one they have to win. So I think the public's going to be all over the Chiefs in this one, and that's why we tried to open it as high as we could. We may end up going back to 7.5, depending on the outcome of some of the other games on Sunday and how much liability is rolling into this Monday night game. But we've been kind of high on the Chiefs all year, so I don't mind being on the high side on them.
All right, Scooch, you know what it's time for? Okay, back for his second week. And I believe I gave him a hard time in the podcast when he wasn't on and saying he was back by popular demand because he texted and said, am I coming back on? But I think I remember I promised you 2 weeks of Scooch Roulette if you got as many people to sign up as you did. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is. I was supposed to get 50, and you said 35 was cool, so you're going to let me back on.
All right, that's right. So Jon Atto, the original member of our very exclusive club, the Syndicate, on the Action Network, for signing 35 people up onto our Action Network newsletter. Welcome back. Listen, you were a superstar last week, and I probably would have had you back on even if I hadn't promised to have you back on.
All right.
People were excited about no dips. People were excited about the 405 game theory. They were excited about your enthusiasm. What are you bringing today, buddy? What are you bringing, Jon Atto from Detroit?
I think I got another Scooch Roulette winner, that's for sure.
Yes, you were the only one who won your Scooch Roulette last week, too.
I mushed you guys. I think I made Scooch take 49ers, and I don't know. And then,
it was the 405 game. That's why. Yeah. You told me. You warned me.
Scooch, the 405 against the betting percentage, 405 this year is 6-2 now. Like, if you guys just want to turn a dime into a dollar, all you guys that don't play, you can just keep taking the 405 against the betting percentage. You're going to come out a winner every year, I promise.
Well, okay. I don't even know what to say about this. Jon Atto, it's everything. It's the language. It's the accent. Like, I love the Midwestern accent. It's just amazing what you're bringing to this show right now.
Chad, aren't you Midwest guy?
I am Midwest, but like you're Detroit Midwest. Yeah. There's a much different sort of dialect in Detroit than there is in Chicago. And I don't really have anything Chicago related. I listen to my father, like he is so heavy in the Chicago accent. But I'm listening to you, like, by the way, 6-2. 6-2 is like as small a sample set as you get, and you're giving it out like it's gold. Like that is a stone cold lead pipe hot. Bet against the public in the 405, and you are golden.
That's just this year. I don't know.
Where'd you go?
I love it. That's great.
Did you step away from your mic? Are you counting your cash? What are you doing?
I was pulling out my notebook to see if it was. I was just making sure it really was 6-2 this year.
Wow, I appreciate you taking notes and bringing like real research to the show.
And a lot of people were telling me about the dips too. Like honestly, like has Scooch ever came on the show and said, I got a sharp bet on the wise guys took a 2-team dip on the Chargers and the Chiefs. You never hear Scooch say that the wise guys took a 2-team dip.
Never heard that. Scooch, have you heard it?
I've never said it. No. Yeah.
Does that happen? Scooch, do wise guys bet dips, teasers?
So I will be honest. The wise guys will bet a 2-team teaser where the home team is laying 6 points and you're teasing them down to a pick 'em. Yeah, basically a money line parlay. Yeah. So much so that most of the places in town over the last 5 years went from laying $1.40 to laying $1.50 to now laying $1.60. So now you have to lay $1.60 on the 2-team teaser. So maybe now, obviously, with the new math, it's not as profitable.
Yeah. Well, the teasers did better this week than last week. But
yep, for sure. Yeah.
Still no dips.
No dips.
No dips.
That's the motto. No dips.
Teasers are for losers. No dips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
All right, Jon Atto, what do you got for me today? What's going on? You got a story to tell. I know you have a story to tell that's inspired by Phil Ivey having the ruling against him for cheating.
Yes, and Chad and Scooch, I've been a commissioner of my fantasy football league for 9 years. And the name of this league is Entourage, probably when that show was good at that time or whatever. So we always carried that name. So after about 9 years of drama-free fantasy football, as drama-free as it could possibly be in fantasy football, we got an alleged cheating scandal that happened this past weekend. So I asked Chad if you guys could make an executive decision like you did on that old show of yours, and see if you can help me out with this cheating scandal that we got going on.
Let's hear it.
All right, I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So like no pressure, but like this is not, this is for a substantial amount of money. This is not for peanuts. So the decision you guys are going to make is going to like affect a lot of guys and probably piss a lot of people off. Okay.
I'm sure they love that you're bringing it to the people's court here.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not mentioning no names. I'm gonna tell you team names just so you guys won't like lose track of the story. So the guys' names, I'm gonna tell you what their team names are. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So here's the story. The first guy's named the Devil. He's the loudmouth. He loves to smack. He likes to do a lot of smack talking. And he started out 4-0. He had Aaron Rodgers. He lost Aaron Rodgers. He's 4-3 now. He lost Andrew Luck. They just said he's probably not going to play. Carson Palmer broke his arm. The guy's got no quarterbacks. So he's kind of like in a bind here. The second guy is the GOAT. The GOAT, we call him the GOAT because he's got TB12 on his team. And when you got TB12 on your team, you're the GOAT automatically. Not only is he the GOAT, but he's also 7-0. He's been accused of cheating in the past, but nothing where we can, put a finger on it. And the third guy in this story is JW. He's an Al Davis guy. He loves the Raiders through and through. JW stands for Just Win, so we're just going to call him JW. JW and the Devil got major heat between each other. They can't stand each other in real life. They'll say things that you're not supposed to say to each other, okay? So Sunday night, we're at the Hulk's wedding. The Hulk is a guy in the league. It's a 10-man league. We're all at his wedding, wives and all. We're all sitting at this wedding, and we're at this party, and the GOAT is a little liquored up, and he's laughing and screaming and saying ha ha and he that the Devil lost all his quarterbacks. The Devil, was trying to keep it civilized because we're at this wedding, but he was getting a little frustrated. Here's where the story gets, just stick with me. Here's where the story gets a little sketchy. JW's brother and the Devil's brother are at the bar, and they're having a conversation about our league because the GOAT was bringing it up to everybody. They said Devil's brother told JW's brother that there's some sort of chat that is going on where they're colluding to grab all the quarterbacks so the Devil doesn't get them. This is what the Devil's brother supposedly said, was told by JW's brother. All right, so this is the end. I'm going to wind down, and you're going to have to tell me what to do here. It's Monday. So now this is all over the weekend. It's Monday now. It's my 1-year anniversary. I'm out with my wife to dinner. All this stuff is starting to go on. It's my anniversary. It's no phone zone. I'm trying not to look at my phone, and I got 14 phone calls and 1,300 group text messages. The Devil is claiming that there's been collusion in the league and that JW and that the GOAT are colluding to pick up all the quarterbacks so that he can't get one. In our rule book, colluding is considered, an offense that you can't do. But I never put anything to it that said, what we do in this situation. So the GOAT claims that this is all BS, that this is just politicking, that the Devil's just politicking so that nobody picks up quarterbacks. and JW saying that there's no truth to any of this. But now the devil wants all his side bets canceled. Everyone makes their own side bets, like for whatever they want. Whoever's got a better record between the two. He wants all his side bets canceled with JW and the devil, and he wants the devil, with the GOAT, and he wants the GOAT kicked out of the league. I put the whole league on pause. We took a vote. Nobody wanted to vote and like say what their vote was, so we did a vote through email where nobody knew who it was. It was 5-5. I let all 10 teams vote, and now it's 5-5. So now it's on you, Chad, and you, Scooch. I need an executive decision. What do I do? Do I throw GOAT out of the league at the end of the year? Do I cancel all the side bets, or do I just let the league continue the way it is?
Boy, tough one.
There's so much to unpack there.
I try to do it.
No, you go, Scooch.
No. Well, the devil's in the details, so
Oh no!
Yeah.
You know what, Scooch? You are a hoot.
Yeah. So, I mean, no rules were broken by them grabbing the quarterbacks, correct? I mean, unless you can prove collusion.
Yes, correct. But
it's hard to cancel any side bets when no actual rules have been broken.
Yeah.
I
don't know, Chad. Anything?
I agree with you. Do not cancel the side bets.
And
I think if there was collusion in the way there's sort of Colin Kaepernick collusion, it's very hard to prove, and you're never going to get it out of J-Dub and the GOAT, and the league carries on, and the devil, they might be colluding, they might not. But the end of the game is that the devil had bad luck, and that happens sometimes in fantasy football. Sometimes there are bad beats. Sometimes the right side is the winning side. And so my feeling is that everything carries on, and he's got to suck it up.
All right.
And by the way, he's got to suck it up and take the trash talking that comes with it.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I think you guys, once they listen to this pod, I think it's going to be so much easier on my life that I don't have to actually make the decision, that you guys made the decision for me.
I think once they listen to this pod, the devil is going to come after me and find me.
I know.
I'll tell you right now, I am not going back to Detroit for a very long time.
We're coming to Vegas for our 10-year next year, Scooch. So I'm sure.
Oh, great!
Get out the buffet tickets, Scooch.
I know. Let me know where the devil is, and I'll hide.
All right, I got my Scooch roulette pick.
All right, Atto, give us your Scooch roulette pick.
I took Chargers last week. I'm just sticking to the same tradition, just a short line, high betting percentage one way. Everybody said Dallas beat 49ers 40-10 last week. Public perception that they're good now. Redskins lost to the Eagles. Public perception is they're not good. Give me Washington Redskins.
Wow. Jonathan Atto going sharp.
Yeah.
Scooch, what do you got?
I'm going. I've touted the Panthers, and I'm taking the Panthers against the Buccaneers. I think they rebound after that awful Chicago game.
All right, I am going all in on Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans as underdogs on the road at Seattle.
That's the 405 game, Chad. Just letting you know.
Is it?
I don't believe in the 405. Listen, if the 405 30 was 7-2, it'd be a different conversation, but it's not.
Okay. All right.
It will be after this week if you're right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going with the Texans. Jonathan Atto, thanks for coming on, buddy. You bring light to the podcast. You really do. You're awesome. I'm probably gonna, even though I don't even owe you anymore, I'm probably gonna have you come back on again.
That's awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Talk to you.